Hey everyone, today we're going to be jumping back into Verdance. So myself picking up all the cards for Jarl, I naturally got interested in playing some of the other Earth heroes, and I have been on a total kick playing Verdance lately. So as you can see, I have definitely taken a bit of a plunge into the hero, and I've actually really enjoyed playing her. So I wanted to give an update over the list that I'm playing, and then the one card tweak to add Ring of Roses to the deck, so we have it in the list for today, just for the sake of like future-proofing the video a little bit. But to go over the original list, because I put one out when Rosetta first dropped, and I had done some testing with my group with it, and it felt like a pretty solid list. Now, it was a little bit different than other people's lists at the time, and I wasn't playing something like Aethertide, but I ended up amending that. This is still primarily a Waning Moon style game plan where you're playing a lot of tempo and good value numbers, and then using Waning Moon in the end game to just have an extra 3 damage and kill range, specifically with Striders, right? So you're going to Striders and then play your spell during their turn and then Waning Moon. And it means that your efficiency in the early game is a lot more important, because when you're playing good numbers and you're trading really effectively, your opponent can't afford to get too far behind because they're at an even lower starting life total, right? You can imagine yourself as starting at 40, and then while we're on Goliath Gauntlet most of the time, a very simple Emeritus plus Waning Moon means that they die at 7, right? So they have like a 33 health hero, or -7 to whatever it is, and you have 40 health, right? So it's pretty good value for you. But to spoil a little bit of the list, we do have the combo in the sideboard for something like Jarl or potentially new, right? It's pretty simple to include, right? It's just the 3 healing potions, the Plume, and the Aethertide. For anyone who's not familiar with the combo, you're basically just going to set up all of your healing potions, and then you're going to pop them all in one turn with a couple of Rampant Growths. They can be from hand, or you can retrieve them back with Plume during the same turn, so it makes it a little bit easier to pitch stack. Your main goal is normally aiming for like 2 of them, and then you're going to send your Aethertide, and then you're going to follow up with the final spell. Usually it can be like a 0 cost or something like that, or it can be like a 1 cost. It doesn't really matter. And then that's just going to double up the damage. Basically, all you need to know is that if you play for that game plan and slower matchups, you have a very powerful endgame that any deck cannot stop, right? But the biggest thing is just slamming the 3 healing potions, waiting to get your double Rampant Growth, and some combination with Plume is like normally good enough. You can min-max something beyond that, but that's the main gist. The rest of the deck is playing good tempo, it's playing efficient numbers, and we're really looking to use Waning Moon a lot. It's why we're on something like Harvest Season, because Harvest Season obviously you can play turn 1 and it's really good. It fills your Earth cards in Graveyard. The amp is sometimes relevant with the +3, right? Like if you just draw into Rampant Growth, you can amp a really large Arcane ping at your opponent. It works with Waning Moon on curve, right? And same thing with Rampant Growth, or sorry, Pulsing Aether in Life. Like you can just opt to not play the life portion. You just play the Pulsing Aether for 4, right? This is just like Aether Hail. And Ring of Roses is just like a very easy include here. I don't think you need to have like a very tall Arcane style version of the deck to get value out of Ring of Roses. So a couple things, right? It's another 3 block non-attack, so like you can just block with it if it doesn't feel like it's correct to play it. But the biggest thing is you can just play this, and then anytime in the end game when you're sending pings at your opponent, they have to respect the pings a lot more, right? Like sure, you can send like your 4 Arcane and stuff like that, but even if someone's playing AB1 and 2, if you just go Harvest Season, Waning Moon, like you're going to like connect, right? A lot of decks are playing AB1 at the moment, and they're not going beyond that. And even if they are in the end game, right? Like if you send Fighting Spirit at someone late game, and it's just 1 Arcane, are they going to pitch an entire card? And if they don't, then you get the extra trigger off Ring of Roses, and then you'll ping twice, right? So you're doing 2 extra points of value. So if you consider Ring of Roses being out, like Fighting Spirit, or assuming that the ping hits, right? And then you're gaining 2 health back. Like it's pretty incredible, honestly. And there could be an argument to like replace like a Fruits or something to go up to 3 Fighting Spirit, but I think Fruits is just really good. Like you just need to be able to discard really like effectively, fill your graveyard. It's really good turn 1 equity, and like discarding Fruits late game, right, with Ring Out is like the same problem, where it's like, are they really gonna like pitch an entire card to stop the Arcane, like assuming they don't have Tunic up? And the answer is like probably not. So I'm not really compelled to play like a tall Arcane stylist. I still think you can just play the exact same like value mid-range like Battle Mage Verdance list, and just playing Ring early just is going to generate you a lot of value. So the rest of the deck is pretty standard about what you would expect in terms of our reds. We have good generics, so we have CNC, we have E-Strike, we have Fighting Spirit, Sigil, and Sync. These are just good value numbers. They help you achieve your game plan of playing like really good tight numbers in the early game, so that way you chip them down low enough to kill them in the end game. We're playing Goliath Gauntlet. You can throw in a maybe board if you prefer playing a Stonewall Gauntlet. I think Stonewall Gauntlet's very good, and I think it'll probably be better with Hunted coming up, because things like Draconic Chain Links, blocking and forcing them to close and reopen the chain is going to be a lot more impactful probably. Although Syndra, it's a little hard to tell at the moment, but I assume that it'll be very good into her. I've just liked it currently with the meta because you can send your first CNC and normally they'll crown block, and then it means that your second one comes in for 8, which is a lot harder for them to answer. And then also when you go into the sideboard, we have Weakest Link as well. So just being able to put that up to 8, you know, against like Enigma or Zen, or even New, I just feel like is just very impactful compared to the 2 block you normally get out of Stonewall. There's very few decks currently that actually get punished by closing and having to reopen the chain to get around the debuff from Stonewall. So normally it's just the 1 block plus the -1 that you're giving to the current attack. So it's just kind of like a block to Blade Break, which I don't think is bad. I just like the +2 value tempo wise with like CNC or Weakest Link, but that's just a personal preference for me. Rest of the deck, of course, we have the really powerful Earth Majestics, and especially our Decompose package. Depending on how you manage it, you only need to decompose 3 times to get your hero power online, right? Because you only need 8 in there, so you can banish 3, 3, and then 2. You can work with the numbers a little bit. Your earth ratio is high enough, but it's also perfectly fine just to go like decompose 2 earth cards and then like a normal, like some like wizard or generic card that's an action. So you don't have to sweat it too much, but if you're ever in a pinch and you like really like get in a good spot early game where you're just like churning earth cards in the graveyard, just like remember you only need to decompose 3 times to get the hero power online. And then we have a lot of filler earth cards here. Like we have like just normal, you know, cards you want to block with, right? That'd be like something like Autumn's Touch, or Fruits is just pretty much always going to discard every single time. You can block with it obviously, and in some like niche circumstances you can send it for 7. Pulsing Aether in life, we normally only are going to play the Pulsing Aether half and just send Waning Moon. If you just get extra resources, like an extra card in the late game, like in your hero powers online, you can like send life if you want to. And then for our blues, it's kind of scattered a little bit. Like we have Photon Splicing just because, like I said, it works with the curve of the combo. If you're going to go for like Healing Pot combo, it's just like a card you can play as well in the end game just to like turn on Waning Moon, right? If you can't find Emeritus. And you can like discard to amp it, which is like kind of relevant sometimes. It's, I mean, like Destructive. We're on Destructive. I've kind of thought about honestly like cutting down on it and maybe replacing it with something else now that we're not really playing Tree plus Aethertide a whole lot, but we can maybe work around it. But even in some matchups, I still think it's perfectly fine. Scour is really powerful. Like you need this pretty much for Viserai to have a good game. Summer's Fall is like paired with the reds in the sideboard. It's just like a Decompose card that's like a blue earth card. This could be like blue Carapace, I think, but there's a lot of times like you'll find collateral where like playing this is like perfectly reasonable. Like you play against an Azalea and they give you like a Blood Rod or something like that, and you can get like a 2-card 6 out of it, and that's like perfectly fine. And then Warmongers is here. This could also get replaced. So maybe another wizard card or another utility blue. I just still think it's kind of good right now. And I haven't really thought about what I would probably replace it with. And then for the sideboard, like I said, we have this for the MST heroes and for Aurora. We have Healing Potion plus the combo pieces for the slower matchups. And then we have Summer's Fall. This is for Aurora. It's for Azalea. It's for Viserai. And it's for Enigma. So against like Aurora, you can bottom their Channel Lightning Valley, you can bottom their embodiment tokens. Against Viserai, you can bottom Malefics, obviously. Against Azalea, you can bottom your disease tokens, and against Enigma, obviously you can bottom Mirror Guy. And then into Enigma, we also have Scar, just to have like a little bit more tempo to try to clear the Mirror Guy. I really don't know if I'm like sweating this matchup too much, but you know, it may be completely pointless to put that much effort into trying to have a decent game, but I think that like this could be a little bit of an edge for the matchup. And if we go down to the maybe board, we can talk about Tree again. So specifically, it's just the fact that I think that it requires too many cards and it's a pretty negative tempo loss for you to be able to play Millennium Tree, because this is usually always in combination with Aethertide most of the time, right? Because the whole selling point is that, well, people are normally going to bring AB1, so you play Tree, you send Aethertide, 3 of it's usually going to connect, and then you get to play something else with an amp 3 on it again, right? So it just chains itself, and the value proposition's pretty good. The main problem is it requires you to have a higher density of non-attacks, specifically wizard action. So I've been playing Tree in this list for the past few weeks, and I ended up cutting it for harvest season. We'll run it again this weekend and see how it feels, but the biggest thing here is that there was a lot of turns where I would play Tree for a line, right? So it'd be like Tree and Aethertide into like destructive, and that felt pretty good. And then I would draw the next hand, and the next hand wouldn't have any actual like arcane damage in it. And while I could just send Aethertide as like a 2 for 4, not being able to carry over the extra damage was really relevant in my opinion. So it made it pretty awkward. If AB lists, like if AB counts ever change as well, this card becomes so much worse. I think the main reason why this card is very good right now is because people are normally on AB1, and so AB1 specifically masks out that Mind Warp and Destructive Aethertide are always going to connect, whether it's through Aethertide like Surgent or just being played themselves, right? That's just currently my opinion on it. Now, if this is entirely personal preference, so if you like playing this more tempo based with the spells, like you should absolutely go for it, right? The swap would just be like Fighting Spirit in the harvest season. Like I just view these more with the Waning Moon game plan, which is my primary game plan into most heroes currently. But if you like playing that version of Verdance, you should just cut these and play probably Surgent into a lot more matchups, right? You know, there's someone in my group who plays this version a lot, and it's very good. I think he's even on like Forked Lightning and stuff. I'm not dismissing this, like it is a very powerful card. I just I've found myself with this style of list, which may be personal preference to me. Just I like playing the tempo-based game plan, specifically like more in the lane of like Bull Lantern and stuff like that. But if you do want more interaction with your opponent, you are going to want to look at cards like this. So it could be the time to play it. Who knows? They do interact pretty well against a lot of heroes. And when they only bring AB1, they're incredibly powerful. So this can always be flexed around, right? Like if you were to ask me the one thing that I don't think is solved about the list, I think it would probably be if you want to play a little bit more value-based game plans, or if you want to play more for like arcane disruption, specifically with Tree and Surgent. So that's the overall list. Once again, to reiterate, the main game plan is just simply chipping your opponent down, playing good value numbers, decomposing whenever you can so you can get your hero power online, because then your card rates become a very, very powerful, right? Something like Heartbeat of Candlehold becomes a 1 for 6 with Go again when your hero power is online. Obviously, you can play it in the early game if you just get the card, right? Like if you go first and draw it, or if you go second and draw it, and there's nothing else you can do with it, like it's perfectly fine. To gain 3 health off of a blue, like that's still very strong. But obviously, the point of these cards is really once the hero power is online, that's when you're really kicking things off. And that's when things like Rampant can be very powerful, right? So in the end game, even if you're not playing the combo version of the deck, you can still go like pop your Harvest Season, play a Sigil, and then in response to the Verdance trigger, right, because you have the Verdance trigger on the stack that's waiting to deal the 1 arcane, you can just play like Rampant Growth and Life, right, and then you're going to amp 7 on that. That's a huge chunk of damage. I've even in just normal aggro matchups, I've been able to like double Rampant with like a Sigil and a Fruits and stuff like that, and the value proposition is pretty nuts. Like you're dealing like double-digit arcane to your opponent, like you're gaining double-digit health back. And when you consider both ends of that, and also the fact that half of that is arcane damage, not just like physical damage that they can block naturally, a lot of the times these have AB1. Sometimes it's like absolutely game losing. So you do have these very powerful random pop-off turns once the hero power is online, so decomposing is very important. But other than that, like you kind of just want to like block with a couple cards, play some efficient lines, like do the math in your hands, right? Like think about like, is it mathematically correct for me to block with this card here, or should I send it? Just like think about very basic fundamentals like that. In terms of like turn order, like going first is normally like a safe bet, just because you have so many life gain cards. Like if you go first, you're probably going to get like a fundamental advantage over your opponent, right? And you'll get an arsenal as well, especially if you're playing the combo version. And so to quickly go through our matchups, we have Aurora here. So like we said with Aurora, we're going to play Summer's Fall, and we're going to play Weakest Link. And Weakest Link or CNC, of course, can come in with Goliath, although it is a personal call if you would rather have the AB1 for Metacarpus. I'm probably leaning towards running Metacarpus most of the time. So actually while we're here, I'll just update that in real time for you. So I usually prefer to have the AB1. There's just a lot of things that can go wrong if you don't present like AB1. If you ever really need to, you could pitch with Striders. But then for the rest of the deck, like we're only going to run one Rampant Growth in my opinion, because we just need more blocking cards against her. If you ever have a turn where she plays like CLV or has like a burn up shock turn and you like have like a bunch of Rampant Growths in your hand, you're going to feel really sad. But one is still very powerful, right? That means that we can always make sure that we can arsenal it. We don't have to worry about drawing the second one. And then like we talked about, you can look for that like mid to late game pop off turn where you're just going to gain a bunch of life and then play the Rampant Growth out and just like completely swing the game for you. For Azalea, we're trying to be pretty disruptive. We want to be trying to send disruption pretty often, as much as we can, right? So we have Goliath Gauntlet, so CNC comes in for 8. We obviously have Plow and Felling. You just want to slow the game down against her, because whenever she just gets like free 5-card hands every turn, it's just too punishing for you, right? Same reason we're on Warmongers. Card's really good into her. She normally has AB2, so it's kind of a little bit dicey, right? But you'll still probably get some value out of Ring of Roses, because she also just can't really pitch for AB2 that often. And you're just disrupting her as much as possible. You're putting D-Reacts in Arsenal, and then when she dominates stuff, you still have some instant speed life gain, so you're kind of able to still play your cards in a sense, despite the fact that she dominates through you. There's a consideration to play Summersfall here, just to be able to bottom some of her tokens as she plays against you, right? So if she plays like a Bloodrot token, like this is kind of a 2 for 8. So you could definitely consider playing it. I think the replacement that it would go in for is just like Fighting Spirit, in my opinion, at least. So you can go ahead and make that change now. I don't really know if you want the 3rd copy. Like it's a bit much and you have other decomposed cards you want to play. But every once in a while, like you'll get a spot where like playing the Summersfall is like pretty good, right? So you'll be happy that you have it sometimes, but you don't want it like all the time. For Enigma, this one's like pretty tough, right? But the whole purpose here is we have Plume so we can get back Summersfall on demand. We're saving Scar for when they hit us really hard with Mirror Guys, so that way we just get like a 0 for 4 go again out the gate. And then some of the Tall Arcane can definitely help with her ward. She normally only presents like AB1. So you're trying to chip her a lot so that she can't really build the board state very well into you, but you have to have a really high density of attack cards, because like you just cannot afford to let her just like stick a board, right? Or just get away keeping extra stuff. But it's a very difficult matchup for you. And then to Jarl, like what we talked about, we're going to play the Surgeon combo. So playing the Surgeon combo, you're just stacking the healing potions. You're going for that end game where you're going to pop all of the healing potions. You're going to double Rampant Growth usually most of the time. You're going to send your Aethertide for a bajillion, which then connects, and then you get to play like something like Photon Splicing or a 0 cost like Destructive Aethertide for another bajillion, and then they lose a game. And if for some reason they live, you're just going to pop Striders on their turn and like finish them off with a Meritus Scolding. Against New, we're doing the same thing. We're running a couple more cards because it's more fatigue orientated. And the main problem with this is that she has so many ways to disrupt your combo, especially in the end game, whether that's using Mask, playing something like Bonds, Prognosis. She has a lot of ways to attack your arsenal and attack your hand, and it makes it very difficult to hold on to the combo. But the problem is that if you play normal mid-range game plans into her, especially if she's on something like CYB, you have absolutely no shot of ever winning the game. She'll just fatigue you out from there. So you have to go for the combo, but it is pretty bad, so I wouldn't sweat it too much, but it's just it's the version you have to play to win. And then if we cover Viserai, we're trying to be a little bit more aggressive here. So you'll notice like we're citing out like the D-Reacts, because like they're probably going to be doing a mix of stacking into attacking into you. So you want to always be converting your hands in case if all they do is like pass back and do like just stacking rune chants. I still kind of want Carapace because I think that they attack you enough that there's a reason to include it. They'll have to have a bunch of little mini pop-off turns with like their Malefics and stuff, but if you find that it's not very helpful, you can always try something like Scar instead. Specifically for when they do their tempo swing into you, you have a 0 for 4 with go again in your arsenal. And then finally Zen, same deal. Like you'll probably play into a lot of matchups. I feel like Zen's a little bit standard. Like you're just going to play like some good numbers, but the biggest thing here is we're going to side out our Rampant Growths in favor of Weakest Link. Although you maybe can make the argument you could still include one of the Rampant Growths and maybe just cut something else. Just having like one Rampant Growth turn I think is like pretty good. But you can try this for now and then, you know, figure out what you want to do in terms of replacing a card. Okay, so that's the list for today. I hope it was helpful. If you give it a shot, let me know how it goes. Obviously, if you're playing this before the release of Hunted, you can just like swap it for Fighting Spirit. That was the cut that I made personally. Still doing the same old Waning Moon stuff as before, but we have the addition, of course, of the Healing Potion combo in the sideboard with Aether Tide. Until next time, thank you for watching.